Excited to have Anthony here. I will introduce Anthony in just a second, and then we have a couple segments of the conversation today. First is introducing Anthony, letting you know kind of who Anthony is within the landscape of the marketing world in AAA, defining marketing compliance and kind of what it means for AAA. We'll have a short discussion there. Content under pressure and how marketers are producing content, the types of content they're producing, who's involved. And then we'll talk about the impact of digital work management and obviously the partnership with Aproove that we've been honored to power as our last section. And then we'll open it up to Q&A and then we'll close. Should be a good section. Anthony, firstly, thank you for coming today and thanks for speaking with us and everyone on the call. Anthony's a campaign manager at AAA Life Insurance, where he works in creative operations and serves as the administrator for the Aproove system. He's been there for over 3 years, where he plays a key role in managing their compliance workflows within Aproove and within the company. These workflows help ensure that every version of a marketing piece meets the regulatory standards of each state, which is an important theme that we'll talk about today. Before joining the creative operations team, Anthony spent time on the creative strategy side at AAA, and brings a decade of experience in graphic design. His background includes hands-on experience with multiple software and proofing tools and review process tools, making him uniquely equipped to bridge the gap between creativity and compliance. Anthony, thank you for being here again, and I think you're a great person to talk about compliance in the creative space. And maybe just to start us off, Anthony, we have different types of organizations on the call. Compliance means different things to different companies. Maybe to start, if you can describe for us the types of compliance and policies that you're managing at AAA Life, that would be helpful to set the stage for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, let me say thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor and a privilege. But a lot of things that we go through on the compliance end of things at AAA Life is disclaimers for different states throughout our different products. Each products have different things that we can and can't say, things that have been filed with the states that need to be said. And we do this across direct mail, across corporate communications, email campaigns, as well as sales tools as well. So a lot of it is disclaimers and things that we have to regulate and make sure that we are compliant with.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It's my understanding that you're dealing with, obviously rules, regulations, norms across many different states. You mentioned that already. Yeah, can you describe like how many states you're producing unique content for? Maybe a little bit more about why you're producing unique content for those states. You talked about that already. And then just what that means for your marketing production and the complexity around it.
Yeah, definitely. So we have different products, and each of those products are different within the states as well. It all depends on how they were filed. And we have to go through and make sure we're saying the right things for the right states, because if not, then we could be fined, or there could be customer complaints that get sent in, and then we have to address those. But yeah, there are probably, I want to say 10 to 12 different state variations that we could create for any given direct mail piece that we send out. I work heavily in the direct mail, so that's what I'm probably going to be speaking to mostly. But we service all 50 states, but there are some variations where some could be combined states, like California, Nevada, Utah, for example. Other states are single, like Texas or Idaho. But there are probably, yeah, anywhere, it ranges from between like 5 to 13 different versions depending on the product, and that can get complex as we go through the workflows and then when it gets into print production as well.
I think you were telling me something about New York, or there's certain states that have an incredibly high bar, and
Yeah,
you're really like managing to the highest bar, I guess, of a
yeah,
variety of states.
exactly. There's some states are, it's just one disclaimer that makes it different from what we call the generic that gets mailed to most states. Or like you said, there's New York that has like a laundry list of things that we have to manage, and other additional inserts that have to get put in, and we use Aproove to make sure that all that is correct before it gets sent out.
That's great. Um, and yeah, like it sounds like you have obviously multiple versions, maybe versions for each state, and then you have multiple products as well. You might have, all, you know, also different campaigns that are representing those products. So it ends up being very version heavy and rather complicated, which
Yeah,
makes
definitely.
it also sounds like it's a complex process. There's a high penalty for error. Given this in your process at AAA Life, can you share with us how many teams are involved in these processes, and who is actually in the workflows that you're managing internally, and what are their roles?
Yeah, excuse me, definitely. So I'll probably go over our most complex workflow, which starts something that we've never mailed before and takes it all the way through to creating the different state versions. But up front on that, we have what we call our direct mail leadership team, which are some seniored people that have been there for a while. We just get their eye on it to make sure that it passes a check on them. We also have our brand team to make sure we're compliant from a brand perspective. We have actuarial to make sure that we're talking about the product the right way and make sure all of our numbers are correct. The compliance team, of course. I look over it from a print production perspective to make sure that we have all the stuff changing in the right way and that it's getting printed properly. And then we also have a content editor who looks at it to make sure that she's kind of goes over the compliance checklist that we have as well, and more grammatical stuff that we can and can't say. She's pretty on top of that. And then our creative director gives the final sign off on it before we start making all of the state versions. So we use that process to get what we call the generic approved, and then we build all of the state versions from that generic.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I think you've painted a pretty good picture of what compliance means for you at AAA Life. Before we move on to kind of content in the organization, content under pressure, maybe for someone not in the insurance industry, or maybe someone who's newer to compliance, just at a high level, what's something that they might not realize is hard about getting compliance right, um, either broadly or within AAA Life as you've been through this compliance journey?
Yeah. So AAA Life is my first peek into the insurance industry. I was at multiple other retail places before this, but something from my perspective, and my wife even comments on it too, is that it takes so much just to mail something, and it's not something that a lot of people see or get a good view into. There's so many complexities and processes from beginning to end, and especially in the insurance space, you got to make sure that everything is right, everything is cordial before you send it out. Or like I said earlier, you could be hit with fines or customer complaints that you have to do follow-up mailings and stuff like that. So there's just a lot of minute details that need to get handled to make sure that something is right before it goes out.
That that makes sense. It is definitely can be painful for sure.
Yeah.
Great. So moving kind of from general compliance and what it means to you and more into the marketing that's coming out of your organization. You've touched on this a little bit, but for everyone on the call, it'd be helpful to get a better picture of what your teams at AAA Life are building. You've obviously mentioned direct mail broadly, but on the marketing front, what types of content assets are you producing across your team and then other teams that might be dealing with similar types of compliance?
Sure. So, like I said before, I deal heavily in direct mail. We do anything from, I think, on the low end, like six pieces, six different packages, to we could do like 20 or 30 different packages in a given month or cycle. And all of those have some variances between them. And that's not including the state versions that need to get approved as well. Um, I know that our brand team puts out some resources. We have corporate communications that does internal resources as well. I've seen signage, and I believe I've seen an annual report come through our system as well. And then we have our sales support team that puts presentations through and gets actuarial and compliance to sign off on those. So we run a pretty good gamut of different deliverables that get put through the system. It used to be mostly direct mail, and then we've kind of branched out to include a lot of stuff within the company.
Yeah. And maybe for those who are less familiar with direct marketing or direct mail, I guess what is unique about the challenge with creating direct mail, approving direct mail? You've touched on versions being a complicated factor, but maybe there's other nuance in the direct mail space that's worth mentioning too.
Sure. For me personally, from what I see, a lot of it is nuances in the production because there are so many different versions that have to get approved through compliance. That means we have to output that many different versions as well. And it's like I said, there's a lot of complexity with how things are going to be printed and what's going to be changed. And then I'm sure there are print teams that deal with that. But the just the overall complexity of mail that I didn't realize before I got here and the different versions that need to take place there.
Yeah. I think you mentioned at some point when I think you said sometimes you can have up to 150 to 200 proofs per project or something like that, which sounds a little bit overwhelming if
Yeah,
you scale out the mixture of versions plus different types of content that you're producing.
yeah, definitely.
Sounds complicated. For your team at AAA Life, you know, pre bringing in like digital work management, can you talk to us about how your team was managing this before you digitized this process with Approve?
Mhm.
Yeah, and what that process looked like before we started working together.
Yeah. So I came on after Approve had already been implemented. I think it was still in like not quite the infant stage, but maybe the toddler stage of when I got there. But before that, it's my understanding that everything was handled via Excel spreadsheets and emails. And then I believe there was even like a real life Kanban board where we had a whole bunch of note cards put up and people would move those from row to row just to figure out where things were in the process. But yeah, again, it's my understanding that things were getting lost, people weren't being held accountable, and it just seemed like a mess. Like I've experienced in other companies as well, where you don't have a proofing or a project management tool. A lot of things get lost, or people aren't held responsible for the deadlines that you need to make sure you get your deliverables out on time.
Yeah, and so obviously timeline deliverables, being missed was probably a trigger. Was there a specific challenge or trigger, if you remember, that made you realize internally that the process needed to evolve?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the deadlines where it would pop up all of a sudden and where or before I got here, they were like, yeah, we need this to get to the printer, but it's still halfway through the process and that could take days to catch up. And I know that with Approve, it's cut down the review time per task by like 2 days. It went from 5 days to get somebody to review something down to 2 or 3. So I know introducing that has been a good benefit in terms of the production deadlines and making sure people are held accountable to review what they said they were going to review.
Great. We're happy to hear that. And that's probably a good pivot to kind of the impact of digital work management, the impact that the Approved partnership has had, hopefully for you. Um, you know, we would love to hear, first of all, we've been honored to work with you throughout the AAA Life journey. We've been honored to help automate some of these processes. Can you, Anthony, talk us through how your teams use Approve in your workflows today, and maybe go a little bit deeper into how you've chosen to deploy the technology and, hopefully to save you time, effort, and resources?
Yeah, absolutely. So approved since I've gotten here, it already started out great, but it's gotten even better with the implementation of certain actions that we use in the workflow that fire off in the background that help automate things to the project management feature, the just the workflow automation has also been massive for us. The notification emails that get sent out, making sure people have stuff on their to-do list. Just the whole workflow automation has been great since I've been here. And one of our compliance people said that they hadn't really done a lot of compliance reviews before, but they really love the automation that this provides, knowing that they don't have to go in or come to me to figure out when things are due. I don't have to actively project manage everything because that would be absolutely ridiculous for the volume of stuff that we do. But Aproove does a good job handling that, and just helping me know where the issues are, but the projects kind of handle themselves now that we've gone through and set these workflows up to run on their own, basically.
That's great. And I know that you've kind of spoken to some feature benefits, workflow. I know at the onset of the call, we talked a lot about like version complexity, especially state version complexity. I know
Mhm.
for other organizations, they might see this as federal version complexity, but
Sure.
I think you've been pretty innovative in how you, as an organization, have dealt with this. Can you speak to how you've worked with digital tools and Approve to help manage the state-specific or product-specific content variations? I think that's an interesting story in your case.
Yeah. So one of the big features, and it's probably one of Approve's biggest selling points, is like the smart review or the pixel by pixel comparison that we have. And that paired with the change filters that Approve has in the review environment just helps speed things up tremendously from my perspective. It seems like comparing that to where they were before, where every page had to get manually reviewed. Like I don't know if they'd stacked them side by side on a screen looking at PDFs or whatever, but the fact that you can compare one version to another and see the differences between the two, and then notice what changed or what needs to change, that'll the Approve will tell you like what on the page has changed and then what pages overall have changed. And that's been a huge time save for our compliance. At first, when I got here, coming from the creative world, I didn't quite grasp the complexity and the need for like a tool like Approve. But as I've been in it and lived in it and done it on my day to day, it's pretty clear why it was picked for us specifically, just because we review text heavy documents, and like you said, the so many versions that we've had to go through, that it's been a great tool for us.
And I think you've also maybe gone a step further. We obviously have many customers who are doing smart version control, and it's my understanding in your workflow that you're doing some pretty creative things with master files. And you touched on this briefly, but it might be helpful for others to hear a little bit about how you've engineered that process. And
Mhm.
because I think if I'm understanding correctly, that's helped you consolidate multiple workflows into a handful, which has, I think, been a benefit.
Yeah, so we use static proofs within Approve, and we create what's called our lockdown version, that we compare all the states to. So what we mailed previously, we have that generic lockdown version, and we use that to launch a product. And then once we get that up to date, then we compare the state specific versions against that. So we have one lockdown, quote unquote, lockdown file that we use where nobody can comment on it, nobody can change it. And then we compare California, Texas, all of the state versions against that. So we know how those differ from the generic that we're sending out. And we can use, like you said, it's helped us condense multiple workflows into just a handful, to where we don't need to have so many things to manage from the admin perspective. And we've used project launch forms and set specific vendors based on certain criteria within the metadata that are met. And it's taken workflows from, I think there were like 15 or 20 workflows when I first got here, down to like 5.
That's awesome. That's an
Yeah.
interesting use of dynamic metadata as well, and happy to get you consolidated down to 5 workflows.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
great.
that's that's great. Um, yeah, you touched on this before. Is there any commentary from the compliance and legal teams as to what they've valued most in the platform? Obviously, time savings, but if there's any other commentary internally from those at AAA, that'd be helpful too.
Yeah, definitely. So like I mentioned, the compliance person that got back to me said that um, they really like this tool. They like being able to see the versions. I know from an audit perspective, it's really nice to be able to go back and review the previous jobs that have been completed, in case we ever get audited for anything. And throughout Approve's growth, I've seen it become really a user-friendly review environment where the training from my end to other people has gotten less and less over my time here. Um, whether that's just improvements in the UI or documentation, it's been awesome to see that progress of where it was to where it is now from when I got here. But the training has gone down and the documentation has gone up, and that's been super awesome.
I think you're saying you're now able to kind of just put people into the interface and kind of and then give them training on an ad hoc basis, which has helped. Good to
Yeah.
hear, I think, perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we would start with like an hour or two of training, and now it's gone down to let me know if you have questions, essentially.
we're happy to hear that. Well, thanks for walking through that. For those who are considering digitizing on the compliance journey, you've obviously been through it. Any broad advice for those who are considering a path like this, or those who are maybe still, when you bring up the human Kanban board, that gives me some nightmares. But for those who are still kind of in a process like that, any advice for them as they embark on a journey?
Yeah, if I could boil it down to a word, it'd be don't like don't stay in that world if you don't have to. With the tools and resources that are out here, it just seems like a no-brainer to implement something like this. It's a time save, it's a resource save, and it really helps make sure that things are right the way that they should be before they go from your own little internal world out into the big world where things can happen.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. That covers the questions that I had, but I think, one of our goals here was to really showcase. I think if zooming out for a second, I think you at AAA Life have done a really interesting job of using our master file compare feature, version control, smart review. I know as a follow-up to this, we have some materials showcasing how those features work that tie into maybe for others who are considering going down that journey, how they can follow in your innovation footsteps.
Mm.
And then there's some on this call that are probably a little bit earlier in the journey, and we have some kind of broad content for them too.
Sure.
But those were the questions that I had. We can open it up to questions from others in the group, and then we can see if there are any, and then can move into closing.
Thanks, Kurt. We have a couple of really good questions actually that I'll throw out at you. You may or may not know the answers, Anthony, so I'll just throw them out there.
Great.
So the first question was, does your approved system integrate or interact with your external vendors, such as print partners or agencies? And if so, has this improved visibility and oversight across the full project lifecycle?
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit. We do have print vendors that are within Aproove. They handle all of the file uploads, so we mark the changes in our on our review side. We send it back to them for review and to upload the new file. They upload the new file, and then we go through our review cycle. And them having that access to the project and access to the files has helped a lot in terms of them knowing where the file is throughout the product life or the project life cycle. And they have their own eyes on it because we're dealing with so many other different projects where they're only focused on their stuff, but they'll be able to chime in and ask for an update or pop into the project themselves and see the update and then ask us, hey, can we kind of move this along quicker so that we're able to go in and poke our review teams and ask for help that way too. So I would say that it definitely helps cut down on the overall project life cycle for the vendors to know where that exists throughout the project.
Great, thank you. And one last one, Anthony, and then I think you're home and dry. So I have one last question here, which is if a piece of content were to go out without passing the proper compliance checks, would AAA Life be legally liable for the resulting issues, either through penalties or required compensation? And since implementing a digital solution, have you observed any measurable reduction in compliance errors or legal risk?
I'll speak to the second half of that. I don't have anything measurable that I can think back on as far as how much it has saved us per se, but I have heard it talked about, where if we send something out with an incorrect rate on it, then that's the rate that we have to honor. And that's why it's so important that everybody makes sure that it's correct. So we got like the Swiss cheese model, right? Where if it makes it through everybody, then there's something wrong with the process, which means we need to go back and look at it. But we have a pretty good number of checks in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. And it's not uncommon for us to review something and notice an incorrect rate, or it gets further down the project line and somebody chimes in on something that maybe compliance or actuarial missed. And that's why we have a great team that's throughout the whole entire process that helps us avoid things like that. But short answer is yes, we would have to honor whatever rate or legal ramification happened from the advertisement that was sent out.
That's all the questions I have, Kurt. So other than the follow-up, I think we're good.
Sounds great. Well, thank you again, Anthony. Appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know it's we got a good amount of interest. I think it's because this topic resonates not just in insurance, but across other verticals as well. And I think you've been on a great innovation path that others can learn from. So we appreciate you taking the time. As we mentioned, we'll send out materials as a follow-up that are relevant to how AAA Life and Anthony's team have deployed. But thank you all for coming. We look forward to following up and talking with you soon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, guys.